The man just awake didn't notice. The TV behind him was reporting on a mutated virus. Currently, the virus was spreading widely in the city he was in. The virus mutates suddenly within minutes. Infected individuals also exhibit extreme aggression. Although the authorities have advised everyone to reduce travel through the news, Jeff had consistently missed the announcements until he kept encountering ambulances on the road. Only then did he feel something was off. When he arrived at the supermarket to buy essentials, he noticed a small group of people starting to loot. Confused, Jeff could only return home. At this moment, his sister finally called. Since her whole family worked for the government, her news was different from what was reported. According to her, the virus was far worse than imagined. The infection rate had reached tens of thousands per minute. The authorities had already prepared a safe island. As a family member, Jeff was also eligible to board. The next morning, as he got up, he saw his neighbors outside packing things. It seemed the situation was very critical. Jeff quickly got in his car and headed to the airport. Once he reached the safe island, he could reunite with his sister. However, just a moment before boarding, he found that the boarding gate had already been shut down. The airport had closed all flight routes. The crowd fell into chaos. Jeff hurriedly called his sister, but the message was to tell him to go back home. She would send someone to pick him up later. As he was talking to his sister, a man got into an argument with a staff member. He caused a ruckus at the airport boarding gate. He barged into the closed flight area. The security personnel rushed to stop him, but the man stealthily grabbed a weapon. Immediately, the whole airport was filled with noise. Jeff could only hurriedly leave in the confusion. He originally planned to listen to his sister and wait at home, but the road was now blocked with traffic. The situation was clearly different from yesterday. Almost everyone had received the news. Seeing this, Jeff had no choice but to carry his luggage and walk home. By the time he got back, it was already dark, and he saw a police car in his neighborhood. The police had set up a transport route near Jeff's house. Confused, Jeff went over to check, but he saw a good neighbor of his had been tied up by the police after being infected. Now, they were being led away through the passage. Jeff couldn't believe what he was witnessing, but still, he had to return home. The next day, his sister finally called again, but this time, it was bad news, because there were infected individuals in Jeff's neighborhood. The authorities had decided to quarantine the area. Police would take all the residents away, but the destination would be even more dangerous, because the people in Jeff's community were all potential carriers. His sister warned him not to be taken away, to hide in the house for a few days, and she would come to get him, but that also meant survival would become a problem. Jeff rushed to the nearby supermarket, but all he saw was people fighting to get supplies. When he reached the shelves, only a single flatbread was left. An elderly man snatched it away. Jeff stared in shock. With no other choice, Jeff went to the nearby gas station, where he barely found some unwanted crackers. Just as he was about to head back, a wounded police officer bumped into him and locked himself inside the gas station. It was obvious he was infected. Before Jeff could react, he saw another police officer being bitten by an infected person. Jeff quickly grabbed him up. He initially intended to stop the attack, but the infected person came charging toward him frantically. A gunshot rang out. The infected person fell to the ground. Looking back, it was the bitten police officer. But before he could process this, the police officer inside the gas station had mutated. He kept crashing into the glass, trying to bite Jeff. Seeing his colleague's condition, the officer on the floor seemed to give up. Jeff intended to check on his injuries, but he was stopped by the police officer's gunfire. After telling Jeff to leave the area, the officer decided to end it all. When Jeff returned, he fully realized the seriousness of the situation. He began using the welding tools at home to make a barricade, placing it on the rooftop to prevent any future threats, and tightened the screws on the front door. That night, drones began patrolling the neighborhood. Just as his sister said, the police started taking residents away, officially to a safe zone. But how could it be safe with so many people together? Minutes later, the police began searching every house, but luckily, Jeff had already put up the barricade. He hid inside the house, staying quiet, and successfully avoided being found. Now, he had to continue waiting for his sister's news. Time passed, and 10 days later, the streets were empty, but Jeff had been using solar power to maintain basic functions at home. Every time he sent a video to his sister, it couldn't go through because of the lack of signal near the base stations. He also faced a more serious problem. His supplies were almost gone. Risking it, he could only search his neighbors' homes, armed with his old fish gun, but everywhere he searched was nearly empty. Fortunately, he entered one home, and found an elderly woman. The elderly woman was also a victim. Her children had left, and she had been abandoned here due to her leg problems. But this old woman was not entirely useless. She was very knowledgeable about the area. She knew which houses had more supplies, so under her guidance, Jeff stopped blindly searching. When entering a house, he found a motorcycle. With the added advantage of transport, he could widen his search range. Soon, he discovered a large amount of supplies. Now, the two could use them without worry. Unfortunately, this life didn't last long. They soon ran out of supplies again. But luckily, the elderly woman had good news. She used a walkie-talkie to play the broadcast for Jeff. Apparently, survivors nearby had set up a safe point, and they were calling on everyone to gather. This gave Jeff hope once again. again. However, when Jeff and the elderly woman planned to leave the next day, she suddenly went silent. At first, Jeff thought she was worried he'd leave her behind, so he promised not to abandon her. But the elderly woman seemed reluctant to discuss it. When Jeff arrived at her home the next day, he planned to take her with him, but when he went upstairs, he found only a letter. The elderly woman didn't want to be a burden to him. She chose to end it all. Reluctantly, Jeff had to set off alone, but when he reached the safe point, he discovered that it had fallen the night before. The sound of the motorcycle attracted a large number of infected. Jeff was immediately surrounded. He had no choice but to gun the engine, desperately trying to push forward. However, in the chaos, the motorcycle slipped and flipped over. Jeff could only get up and prepare to flee again, but the motorcycle wouldn't start. The infected were closing in. Jeff had no choice but to abandon the bike and run into the forest. After crossing a dense forest, he arrived at a seaside pier. A large number of infected were still behind him, but luckily, Jeff closed the pier's large door in time, blocking the infected outside. As he was looking for a small boat to leave, he found that all the boats at the pier had already been taken. Just when Jeff felt despair, something caught his attention in the distance. At the far end of the pier, there was a large ship and a small boat. Without hesitation, Jeff jumped into the sea. A few minutes later, he boarded the large ship, but when he entered the control room, he realized the large ship wouldn't start. Just then, Jeff heard strange noises. Something was in the cupboard nearby. He cautiously approached, opened the cupboard and found an infected baby. Startled Jeff. Luckily, it wasn't a threat. Then Jeff started the small boat next to the big one. He knew where the safe island his sister mentioned was. He just had to reach it. But as hopeful as the plan seemed, reality was cruel. The small boat quickly lost power. The engine wouldn't restart. In the dark, vast sea. Just when Jeff was about to give up, he spotted a freighter coming toward him. He waved frantically, but the people coming over were cautious. They only sent a small boat to check first. Everyone had weapons. After questioning Jeff, they finally took him aboard the freighter, though they gave him a hot meal. More questioning followed. A man named Dick, the ship's translator, asked Jeff if he was local and what kind of work he had done before. Jeff quickly said he was local and had worked as a lawyer, but Dick seemed worried after hearing that, so Jeff quickly added that he had also worked as an engineer. That made Dick pass the message to the captain. During the conversation, Jeff realized something. The captain's questioning seemed to have an agenda. Luckily, Dick seemed sincere. He told Jeff to avoid causing trouble. The captain had already taken a liking to Jeff's engineering skills. Jeff wanted to learn more about the captain, but Dick warned him not to ask too many questions. Jeff reluctantly agreed to stay for now, feeling suspicious. That night, he heard something. He quickly got up and went to the window, and unexpectedly saw a few survivors outside. The next morning, Jeff went to the deck. He searched for the survivors from the previous night, but couldn't find them anywhere. Instead, he saw the crew scavenging something. Unable to hold back his confusion, he approached Dick and asked where the survivors had gone. But Dick told him again not to ask too many questions, or he'd be in danger. That's when Jeff realized something was wrong with the freighter. He told Dick that he knew of a hospital with a helicopter, and hoped that Dick, as the captain's pilot, could go with him, and they could head to his sister's safe island together. At first, Dick hesitated, but didn't fully agree. That night, Jeff decided to act on his own. He planned to steal the keys and escape on a small boat. However, as he searched for the keys, he accidentally found the survivors from the night before. Jeff wanted to take them with him, but as soon as he untied the rope, one survivor tried to escape, and encountered a crew member on patrol, who immediately shot him dead. Seeing this, Jeff quickly raised his hands. Just then, Dick happened to pass by. Seeing Jeff in danger, Dick jumped in front of the crew member. The two immediately began to fight, but Dick, using the rope behind him, quickly strangled the crew member. Clearly, the two of them were going to leave together. Dick just hoped there was really a helicopter. Under Dick's guidance, they quickly took the survivors to the small boat, but as soon as they started the engine, the crew had already discovered them. Dick immediately grabbed his weapon and began shooting at the crew, but he was accidentally shot in the shoulder. The rescued survivors were shot off the boat. Luckily, they managed to escape. When morning came, they had successfully reached the shore. Jeff found a car nearby. Now they just needed to go to the hospital and get the helicopter, and also help Dick get the bullet out. But as they reached the hospital, an infected person suddenly ran into them. The windshield was instantly covered in blood. Jeff quickly slammed on the gas, trying to shake off the infected. Luckily, after a quick break, the infected person fell off. Jeff grabbed a weapon from the car and went out to finish off the infected. However, just as he fired a few shots, a large group of infected came from behind. Jeff quickly fired, taking down all the infected, until the ammo in the gun ran out. But the two finally entered the hospital. Jeff was planning to get the bullet out of Dick. When searching for bandages, he heard something. To his surprise, he found many children's voices coming from the vent. Following the sound, he made it to the upper floors. As he continued to listen, a large group of infected was approaching from behind. Jeff could only run through the hallway desperately. He used scissors to temporarily block the door, but when he tried to take Dick with him, he found Dick had disappeared. At this point, it was clear the door couldn't hold much longer, and just then, a nurse raised a nearby passage. Jeff seized the opportunity and managed to slip inside just before the infected reached him. It turned out Dick had already been rescued by the nurse, and since he was injured, she had moved him to a hospital bed. This was the children's ward of the hospital. The only survivors here were a nurse, a doctor, and a group of children. When Jeff told them about Dick's injury, the doctor immediately prepared for surgery. Afterward, the nurse took Jeff to the rooftop. Looking down, Jeff saw he was right. The hospital did have a helicopter, but it was on another building. Getting there was not going to be easy. In a short distance, there were countless infected. Jeff spent 3 days on the rooftop thinking, but he couldn't decide whether to risk it. Just as he continued searching, he found the former captain coming to scavenge supplies. After barely escaping the jaws of death, he ran into these people again. Jeff could only take the risk and try to get to the helicopter, but when they opened an iron door, an infected person suddenly jumped out, knocking down a nearby doctor. The police rushed to stop the infected, but even after they dealt with it, the doctor had already been bitten. She struggled to get up, covered in blood. The children wanted to go check on her, but the doctor hurriedly stopped them, telling everyone to leave quickly. After telling them to take care of the children, the doctor resolutely turned and left. Then Jeff led the group forward, and soon they arrived at the infected concentration area. It was packed with infected everywhere. Jeff could only focus on the infected, letting everyone pass through the hall one by one. When only one girl was left, Jeff wanted to take her along, but suddenly an infected person rushed out. Jeff quickly grabbed the girl and hid in a cupboard. More infected followed them, and Jeff had to use brute strength to block their attacks. At that moment, suddenly, gunshots rang out from outside. When Jeff opened the cupboard, he saw the captain and his men had arrived. By sheer luck, they had saved 2 people, and they hadn't found out about the survivors in the hospital. Finally, the few of them had safely gathered, but even now, they were facing even greater danger. Behind this iron door was the helicopter, but the area was crawling with infected. Every infected person was waiting for them. Luckily, Jeff quickly thought of a plan. Seeing the sturdy iron fence nearby, they tied all the fences together, then hid inside, slowly pushing forward. However, this soon drew the attention of the infected. 100,000 infected immediately surrounded them. Even though they fought with all their might, they couldn't clear all the infected. They could only keep moving forward. But not long after, they were just one step away from the helicopter. Now, they just needed to push the fence to the door and open a passage. Then they could all leave one by one. But when everyone had boarded the helicopter, Jeff, who was left behind, found that some infected could still jump over the fence. Jeff could only fight them off, one by one. At that moment, the captain and his men arrived with weapons. They quickly entered the airport and ordered Jeff's group not to take off the helicopter, or they would lose their lives. Seeing this, Dick could only raise his hands. Just as hope was about to shatter, Jeff quickly broke open the iron gate, releasing all the infected. The scene immediately descended into chaos, and the captain was surrounded by a massive horde of infected. At this moment, Dick saw an opportunity and quickly started the helicopter. Once they reached a certain height, the nurse dropped a rope, allowing Jeff to climb up after finishing the last task. Thus, the group finally escaped the nightmare. But once aboard the helicopter, had they truly found safety? They originally planned to go to Jeff's sister's place, but when they called her,
¡No vengas a Canarias! ¡Da la vuelta! ¡No vengas! ¡Por favor, no vengas a Canarias!
as fighter jets flew overhead, was the safe island his sister mentioned truly safe? And where exactly was their landing pad?